Good evening. I'd like to welcome Inspector Becker and Austin, and also Tom, who's taken over the Wayland News and is here to just observe for this evening, and then hopefully to start writing up in there in February. Okay. So we look forward to seeing the Wayland News back in print again. Item 1, to receive and accept apologies for absence.
Tina Cruz, Tina Goodell, Keith Prince, James Wooler and Claire Bowes.
Yes, Keith.
Yeah, Tina Cruz, we know what she's been through. She's posted things on Facebook. I think it would be very nice if we actually sent her a card from the council with a nice big bunch of flowers to wish her well.
Yeah. All those in favour? Okay. Can I leave that with you, Michelle? Thank you. To note, declaration of members' personal, prejudicial and disclosable pecuniary... So, yeah.
I do apologise. We've received apologies from, yet again, both of our district councillors who we haven't seen for a very long time. It is understood that the double-hatted councillor does have issues that have to be resolved, but at the end of the day, both the county councillor and the district councillors do get an allowance, and that allowance covers them looking after all of the villages and parishes under their responsibility. I just feel it's somewhat disingenuous of them to be quite happily collecting that allowance and yet totally neglecting Watton. We don't even seem to get the apologies that we should be getting that are sincere. Can I ask that council make it known that these people were elected for a purpose and they're not fulfilling that purpose? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Beryl, did you have your hand up as well? The declaration, sorry. Okay, thank you, Beryl. Okay. Is there anyone else for item 2? Item 3, minutes. 3.1, to confirm that the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of November 2022 are a true and accurate record. Has everybody had a chance to look at them? Yes, Pat? Oh, all those in agreement that they're okay? Thank you. Item 4.1, Chairman's Report. On Wednesday, the 9th of November, I attended the Remembrance Parade at Wretham. 3.2. To receive an update on items from the previous meeting, if not agenda items for this meeting. Is there anything, Michelle?
No, other than what's in the pack already, nothing further to update.
Yes, Kathleen. Okay, we'll make a note of that. So, item 4.1, Chairman's Report. 9th of November, I attended the Remembrance Day Parade at Wretham. Thursday, the 10th of November, I attended the Finance meeting. Wednesday, the 12th, I attended the Service of Remembrance at the Commonwealth War Graves at St Mary's. Sunday the 13th, I attended the Watton Town Council Act of Remembrance at the War Memorial and then St Mary's. On Thursday the 17th of November, I attended a meeting hosted by Breckland in the council chamber regarding unlocking your place potential with High Street Task Force direct support, which Jane also attended. This is where my report would usually end, but not today. Part of the rationale that Jane Fountain nominated me as chair is that I sit back, take it in, and then give constructive criticism. 2 such meetings in my report have caused me to do just that. The finance meeting. I was horrified to learn how much is spent photocopying agendas and attachments. Do 10 councillors really need these? We agreed to move towards being a greener council. Have a think about what we really need the office to send out. Could you bring laptops or tablets to follow the meeting? Or watch the TV screen where it's shown? There were many valid and interesting points brought up at the Breckland meeting. New, enthusiastic and forward-thinking staff members have attended. There are new ladies at Breckland that have taken this on. Suggestions put forward, which I feel once we have the report, we have to take further with all the community. Jane and I were informed that the Market Town Initiative money is still available. Did our Breckland councillors let us know? Are they the right people to represent us? I've asked that Jane be copied into all funding matters in future. As this money must be spent quickly and there is a panel meeting on Thursday, I suggested that we put in for the clock to be repaired, as we have had all the quotes and it's ready to go. And the Breckland team seemed happy for this to go forward to the panel. Searches on the internet provide very little information about Watton. To survive and move forward, we must promote the town working together with Breckland, partnerships and organisations within Watton. Too long we have been forgotten Watton. We are currently whinging Watton. Let's be what's next for Watton with a positive can-do attitude. Every year we hold a remembrance parade that we organise as a town council. Why is it left to the last minute to arrange road closures? We know when it will occur. Let's get the request in at the beginning of the year. We need to work with our public services, not against them. I'm also aware that this could mean employing more staff, but if needed, our 4-year plan must be adapted. I've said all that because after a while, you sort of see all the different things and we just are going round and round. And I think as a new council, we've got the potential to move forward. If anyone's got any queries on what I've just said, please see me afterwards. But here ends my report. Yes, please.
Chair, in the light of the various things you've covered in your report, could I ask that that be circulated to all councillors who are here?
4.2, Vice Chairman's report.
Chair, thank you. Trying to read my own handwriting. On the 11th of November, I attended the remembrance at Chaston Place. On the 12th, the remembrance ceremony at the Commonwealth Graves. And on the 13th, our remembrance parade. On the 14th, I chaired the HR committee, which was to do with Clerk's appraisal. On the 15th, along with Councillors Stallard, Fountain and the Clerk, I attended Norfolk County Council at Norwich to discuss Church Walk, but that will probably come up at a later date. And today, with Councillor Stallard and Joe, who is our new food supervisor, we went to Thetford Food Hub to have a discussion with the staff that run that.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to alter the agenda slightly and introduce Inspector Sean Baker and Austin, as they have got to leave after they've done their introduction to you. Sean was going to give a short speech to explain different things, and then if there's any questions afterwards, be kind enough to ask. Thank you.
Evening, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. So my name's Sean Baker. I'm the inspector for the, I suppose, the northern half of Breckland area, which obviously encompasses Swaffham, Watton and Dereham. So I should just very briefly explain. I've policed in Breckland on and off over the years. I've got a very big passion for neighbourhood policing and working with communities and local councils. So that's why I felt it was right that I came tonight just to explain some decisions that have been made by Norfolk Police as a whole, if you like, in relation to certainly the Remembrance Day Parade, which has been a bit of a sticking point, I understand, and we'll discuss that. But also part of my role is as a public order, public safety advisor for Norfolk Police. So I was actually one of those responsible within the command structure for the entirety of the Remembrance Parade policing for the county. So I've probably got a good overview of what we can and can't do as an organisation for you. I suppose the trigger for me coming here is that obviously a letter, some of you will be aware, all of you will probably be aware that a letter went to our chief regarding a feeling there was a lack of support in relation to the Remembrance Day Parade at Watton. I understand that feeling. And I suppose one thing that made me realise was that I've left the local policing, if you like, in the hands of, very capable hands of Austin and his colleagues within the neighbourhood team, and I've not come and formally introduced myself to you. That's not to say you wouldn't have written to the chief, you may well have done, and you're entitled to do so, obviously. But maybe it was a good idea for me to come and introduce myself and let you know who I am and try and explain some of these finer points, if you like. So if I could just, if you can indulge me, and I'll just go through a little bit of the policy change rather than legislation change, but the policy change in relation to how we deal with public events, then obviously I'll take any questions if anybody has any. Norfolk Constabulary, like most, has a long history of trying to support community events. We will always do so. As far as I'm concerned, that will always be the case. Remembrance Day parades are seen as being different to most public events because of their very nature and because of how important they are to the community. However, there is an acknowledgement that there are only so many resources to go around. We will always police or support these events with our local teams wherever possible. And I know that on occasion there are some events which we will have to support on grounds of public safety, and there are some events which we will support because we feel we should. But we always have a limited number of resources to do that with. That shouldn't be confused with the fact that there is some now very clear direction from the College of Policing and the National Police Chiefs Council around police officers and dealing with road closures. The simple facts are that for a pre-planned event, we don't have the authority to close the road. The police officer can stand in the road and they can stop traffic. That should be reserved for and only done in emergency / urgent situations. So the idea of having a police officer in a situation where we have a pre-planned road closure and you would like us to close the road, as much as an officer like Austin would love to support the community and would love to do that for you, and we have done that in the past, that has been against the legislation and guidance that we're meant to work within. The issues around that are that longer term or pre-planned road closures invariably involve diversions, signage, and other considerations that we don't normally have to take into account when we come across, say, a road traffic collision and we just have to safely get traffic to go into a different direction, because somebody has to do that emergency function and that someone is normally us. We simply don't have the training, equipment or capacity to do it for pre-planned events. And you can imagine that if we do it for a pre-planned event in Watton, we'd have to do so in all the other market towns as well. There was a policy decision made this year in line with the guidance from the College of Policing, which was that Norfolk Constabulary would not get involved in any road closures or any Remembrance Day parades What we would have, where possible, is have officers present at those events to support the community. And if there's an emergency situation arose, i.e. somebody went around a road closure, drove towards a group of people, obviously those officers in line with their duty would step in and would deal with that situation. But what they're not to be used for was for pre-planned road closure. I suppose the disappointment for me really is that we didn't communicate that to you well enough. We didn't help you to understand, and all councils, I think, probably to understand why we weren't able to do those closures this year. And certainly Remembrance Day this year has allowed us to stop and think about how we probably communicate that in the future, because the expectation is on us. The responsibility isn't. The responsibility for road closures in many councils actually is done entirely by the county council. So I am led to believe by our traffic management officer that Suffolk County Council, for example, will do road closures on behalf of their town councils. Norfolk County Council don't. But that's a matter for the county councils, and while I have that information, I have no influence over whether the county council does your road closures or not. There is an ongoing piece of work where our traffic management officer, a gentleman by the name of Stephen Askew, is liaising with Norfolk County Council over the coming months, with a view to trying to get some information out to the safety advisory groups and all of the councils, to give them some idea of what we can do, what we can't do, and what the alternatives are. But the simple fact is that anybody who's operating outside of a road closure, by which I mean you have a road closure which has to be authorised by the county council for it to be pre-planned. Anybody who's operating outside of that and is effectively stopping traffic has to be what we call CSAS accredited, which will be the people who you hired for the Remembrance Day Parade this year. You can have non-CSAS accredited marshals working within the road closure, so the road is already safely closed and they can direct people and give people information, but to actually be stopping traffic or redirecting traffic outside that closure, they need to be CSAS accredited. And that's a legislative requirement, and that isn't something that the police can do. So I appreciate that may not be what we've always done, and that may not be what we necessarily want to hear, because, as I say, the community officers like Austin who work here wanted everything they can to support you, and they will continue to do so. But a clear policy decision was made by Norfolk Police that we cannot do those pre-planned road closures because it puts us in a very difficult position, and it's outside of our scope of power and training. I was asked a question about whether police officers can effectively be privately hired. There is something called Special Police Services, which allows either businesses or local authorities or councils to hire effectively police officers through our finance department, where you effectively fund those officers for the time you have them. The cost of that, I was a little bit out with the cost, I'm afraid, but the cost of that starts at £40-something at the very basic for an officer per hour. But that still doesn't give those officers the power to do those pre-planned road closures. They still have to work within their training and what they're permitted to do. So yes, you can hire police officers effectively. What I would say with that is if you are looking to hire officers to be part of an engagement of an event run by your local authority, by your local council, we will always try and do that without any recourse to payment anyway, because that's the nature of our neighbourhood policing. If those situations occur where you feel it might be relevant to contact, to try and engage the police in something where you pay them for their services of being there, please contact me. But yeah, whether it's something we can do within our normal business, obviously I'll try and do as much as I can. So that's where we are. So if I can help at all.
Yes, Beryl.
Thank you for that. The road closures, so we have somebody close the road off with barriers and things, but then we have it manned by local people. So are they no longer allowed to do that?
They can't stop traffic, essentially.
No. Well, this is letting stall holders in to set their stall up and then manning them out and making sure that no other vehicle comes in on the road closure.
I think what we have to be very careful with is when you use the words, making sure no other vehicle comes in, because if they are effectively responsible for stopping traffic in the highway, then they're in a very difficult place if something happens. Because if they're not accredited to do that, stopping vehicles, redirecting traffic, I would say that we're in quite a difficult position. I'm not really the person to ask, but just from my experience, I would say that we're in a difficult position.
Only we're very, very close to time now. The event is Sunday. And if we can no longer use these people to do that,
What event is this?
festive market, the road is closed in town.
So, also to clarify the inspector, point of contact is about
Yeah,
and they are open to
Yeah.
let all
stall holders in, yeah.
I mean, I'm not the person to ask, in as much as it's not my legislation, it's not something we would enforce. The place where people would normally come into what I would say is a difficult position is if they are stopping traffic and they're not accredited to do so. Effectively, that would mean they are causing an obstruction of the highway. Now, we're not going to start chasing people down the street for that, let's be realistic.
Yeah.
But if you're in a situation where the road is legitimately closed, and you've got a county council authority under section 16A for that road to be legitimately closed, and someone is simply moving a barrier,
Yeah.
then I have to be honest, from a common sense point of view, I'm reasonably comfortable with that. Because they're not stopping traffic or redirecting traffic, they're providing information from behind the road closure.
Yeah,
I think you're then in that's the intention is that within the closed road, you can have non-accredited staff, as long as they're sensibly high-vis jackets, etc. You can have non-accredited staff doing what they need to do in terms of just giving information.
So would that be called for next year for an event? Or would we need to get legislated people to be behind the barriers?
I think, so what I'm inclined to do in my role, and then this is to provide a service to yourselves and the people of Watton, in my role as public order, public safety advisor, I can come and have a proper look at the layout, where you're looking to do your road closures and give you some advice. I'm happy to do that, and to take the
If
time
you're
to do
free
that.
on Sunday, it would be very, very nice to see you.
Can I just interject? You will have 2 special constables available throughout the event on Sunday. So you have Gareth Young, we all know Gareth, and also Tom Render, who's going to be available that day anyway. I'm sure if there is such a sticky situation, that their services can be utilised on that day anyway. So I don't think there'll be too much of an issue for that occasion. I know the authority's been given for that road closure on that day anyway, and the expectation for that road to be closed is that purely the barriers to be put in place. The city to have people there to allow stall holders to come in, I don't think this is.
It's a separate issue.
It's a separate issue.
It's only at the beginning and the end. There's nobody there while the event's going on. It's just hours. Yeah, yeah,
And there are diversion south as well.
yeah.
So there's clear warning to other drivers that the purpose of that road closure, what it's for, and the alternative route for them to go. I think the city inspector is indicating that there will be a more soft approach as far as.
It's an entirely sensible compromise.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Peter, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you very much for coming. As a co-author of the letter, I much appreciate seeing you here. And I think what you've said is helpful for us. I mean, it was a bit of a shock to find out, first of all, what we thought was happening. We might have been wrong. Can we say, I think we appreciated the attendance of all the full-time officers and the specials who did come on that day and helped out. It would have been awful. We thought we weren't going to end up with anyone. And a bit of a surprise because we've had a very good community team here who come out on a number of different events to support the town, and the town appreciates their support. So I think it's helpful what you've said. Partly for us as a small town council, it shoves the cost up. I think we paid £800 for that close. We paid the licence and then a company to close the road off who were accredited, and for 15 minutes it cost us £800. But I mean, it's one of those things the council will have to grapple with. But it's something you might want to take back higher up to say, all that is doing in one sense, I understand where you come from. The cost is going on the local councils all the time. If that's what the law says, we have to have accredited people, then we have to have it. But it just becomes difficult for small councils to deal with. Thank you.
No, I fully understand that, and I don't wish to be disparaging towards anybody who runs these companies, but they are a company which provide a very valuable service, and there's a service which is in much greater demand than it ever has been for these reasons, because people are realising that it is absolutely essential to comply with legislation. And many of them are very, very, very good at what they do. But I think where I might be able to, I may not be able to save you any money, but where I might be able to offer you some advice in the future is to look in advance at some of these plans, come onto site with whoever needs me to be there, and with local officers, and have a quick look. I can't tell you the local officers will close the road for you, but we might be able to have a look at how things can be done effectively without maybe you having to fork out for quite so many people. Does that make sense? There might be ways we can move things around sensibly that might help.
Thank you.
So my advice will be free, obviously, and if it's helpful to you, then by all means.
Yes, Keith, you had a question.
Thank you. And once again, thank you for coming. My question is, initially, what is the difference between a road closure and stopping the traffic for 2 minutes? Because every year, I've been going to remembrance service there for 40 years now as a member of this council. And every year, for the 2 minute silence, traffic was stopped. And we were told we were going to have people there and pay them to do it, because the police were not able to be there. And yet we were surprised, and I was, to see what I assume were special constables just standing there. And during the 2 minute silence, the traffic did not stop. They were coming down the Thetford Road both ways, they were coming down the Merton Road, round the War Memorial, and it's the first time in 40 years I've seen traffic moving around there during the 2 minute silence. This was my perception at the time, while two special constables stood there looking at the War Memorial. Yes, they were paying their respects, but why couldn't they have been in the road and just gone?
The essential answer to that question is they're not allowed to, and they never have been allowed to.
They've always done it.
I accept that they've always done it, but the reality is that a policy decision was made within Norfolk Police to, despite the fact we've always done it, to comply with the legislation. And I think it's really hard for me to say that the people who made that decision got that wrong, because otherwise what we're saying to people is that as a police officer, you know you don't have the legal power to do something, but you do it anyway because somebody wants you to. That feels uncomfortable to me as well, and I won't put my staff in that position, to be honest. So I understand the feeling about it, but the fact we've always done it, it does in itself, as of in itself, doesn't mean that we can continue to do it, because at some point there have been incidents, no doubt, in other parts of the country which have highlighted what we should and shouldn't be doing. And that's the way with policing, is that policy and legislation is drawn off the back of incidents where things have not gone as well as they should have done, or an incident has occurred, or something has gone wrong. And invariably that's what drives policy, and that's what drives an understanding of legislation and changes in legislation. We know now that we shouldn't be doing it, and if they've been doing it for all those years, then I suppose the other way of looking at it is we've had something for nothing for all of those years, but the truth is now they know they can't do it. I can't tell them they must. That would be perverse to me to do. So I appreciate it feels awful.
Yeah, I can only sum that up by, I think it was Dickens in one of his novels, then the law, sir, is an ass. Not your fault.
No, I understand your opinion. I really do, but I can't tell people to do something.
Yes, Catherine.
Just a very quick one, and it's a general point, not specifically to do with this issue, but I do think that higher up the chain, perhaps decisions are made not really understanding the concerns of the ordinary, if you like, person in the street. And undoubtedly, one of the things that people would still want if they could have a wish list is to have more visible policing, because it makes people feel safe. And it may only be a perception, and I know you can't do anything about it, but it is a reality that people like to see officers in the street. And although the PCSOs did have a limited power, people really appreciated them being there.
So, I mean, it is my responsibility to make sure that this part of Brexit gets the policing it should. You know, of course there are limitations on resources. I don't have as many officers as we would like, and everybody would like more. However, I mean, what I would say is the officers who work in the local community work as close to the local community as they can, such as Austin, to being based locally. And I'm grateful they are, because I think it's important. I really do. What would be, I suppose, termed response officers who deal with most of our emergency calls, work through the night. They book on at Dereham, but since I've been at Dereham, I started here in January. Since I've been at Dereham, I have made some changes, and those include making sure that when those officers book on, they're not just allocated to be a Dereham response officer. They are either covering Dereham, Swaffham or Watton, and once they're booked on and briefed, they go to those bases. So you should see more police cars, and it may not be immediately visible, but you should see more police officers in cars, and they have to remain in cars. They can't be on foot because they have to get to the next emergency. But they should be here, not sitting in Swaffham, not sitting in Dereham waiting for a phone call. Equally, I've tasked all of the response teams to give allocated contact points for the beat managers. So Austin now has a list of response officers across all 5 response teams who come out to Watton to speak to him and find out what the local priorities are and spend time here. And they will, I say they don't get out of their cars, they will get out of their cars to do dedicated patrols in certain areas. So if there's a particular area of antisocial behaviour, then they will be told, this is where you're going this week, this is our current priority. And they will go there and they'll be out of the vehicle and they'll be recording that engagement work they do. So it is within my gift to try and increase visible policing. Within the parameters, I only have X number of resources to deal with, but we certainly are working to try and make sure there are more visible police officers in the area.
Thank you. So, no other questions? No? Well, I would like to thank you for coming and enlightening the council. And I would also like to thank Austin and the local team for all their hard work within Watton, and assure them that they are appreciated by the residents of Watton. I know from experience that actually we are lucky to have police officers in Watton. A lot of counties, they don't. If you're going to start the olden days, everyone had a village bobby, which you were a village bobby, I was a village bobby's wife. They don't have them anymore, so I think we should appreciate what we have got, not dwell on what we haven't or can't have. I would suggest that perhaps in the new year, Sue Dent and Jane, perhaps yourself as well, myself, could arrange a meeting with Inspector Baker regarding the legislation, because it's quite a lot to take in, and the person responsible for organising that isn't here this evening. So if perhaps you could get together and arrange a meeting that would be convenient times within the working day for you and for our events manager, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Let's stand.
It's very kind that this is something you could consider as the inspection of this area of the division. So some duty time to be basically for the local officers to attend the council meeting in the area, but not in the time. It's like the duty of the division to show up now.
Yeah, of course.
and not choose good stuff. I mean, that's the way. But putting up Saturday and they used to have a brief but the hearts of service of obviously really doing
I'm very passionate about them being as engaged in the community as they feel they need to be, and for that reason they manage their own time as much as possible within the constraints of the shift system and other demands. But I think the big thing is probably fair to say is notice, isn't it? The more notice we get, the more likely it is that we can attend as many of these things as we can.
But I will say, because we used to have good council attendance on our snack meetings, which were a good way of giving you different pieces of information, what's going on in the area, what's important to everybody who lives in Watton, all that sort of stuff. We don't tend to get those attendances like we used to from the town council with those snack meetings, which are on every 3 months. I do appreciate that, of course, more regularly with the snack meetings. But certainly, we could work a balance where we have good attendance at snack meetings, and we'll do the same for the parish council meetings.
Do you?
It's fair.
I think, can I just comment on that? That I think you're right. Kath and I used to attend, we used to attend during the day, and I understand why you have them at night, because those people who work every day then can't go to them. I'm not sure they still turn up, but we were regular attenders. It's just that now, it's like everything else with the council, we're all volunteers. We end up doing more and more during the day, and sometimes in the evening it's rather nice. Even if there's nothing worth watching on television to be at home. But I appreciate what you're saying. Some of us, we do occasionally look at it and say, God, we haven't very good.
When
But
is,
at least you don't throw things at us.
when is the next one, Austin? Do you know the date?
Yeah, it's 18th of January.
And you're going to have it in here at this. Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We continue doing that anyway.
That's,
You're wonderful, Pat.
but as I say, thank you so much for coming. I understand your time is important at the moment, so if you want to, please feel free to go. But if you want to stay to the end, you're very
If there's nothing
welcome.
worth watching on television.
Football Friday, isn't it?
I will disappear because I've got to be back on duty at 7 o'clock in the morning. But just to say thank you, I'm very grateful for the invitation, to be honest, and I'm happy to come genuinely. So if there's anything else I can do in the future, or you need to ask anything else, please just give me a shout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Just,
Don't see that view.
no. I thought you were getting up to show them out. No, they'd be down the bottom of the stairs before you now. Well, while Stan's running, District Councillors Report, item 4.3.
Remember, I'm treated like a mushroom, as all the others are, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you all the wonderful things that Breckland are doing, because they spread it all over social media. All the wonderful money they're splashing around, which isn't their money to start with. So really, I don't have much to report at all, sorry. I've been attending my meetings, planning meetings, council meetings, and apart from the little things I do for various people, obviously, which is confidential, then that's it.
Thank you, Keith. Yes, Peter.
It's probably a question you're not going to be able to answer. How much did our illustrious district council sell Barn and Broom for, having wasted £11 million of our money?
There are an awful lot of councillors who would like to know the answer to that question. If I can give you a bit of history about the deal, I was there at the meeting when it was agreed. We were not even told what we were buying. The officers said, this is an opportunity so good we can't miss it. But if it got out, even at the last minute, we could miss out on this opportunity. It was then put to the vote because this was in over the limit which officers could spend without reference to full council. So we were asked, will you agree to this deal? And I did say at the time, I'm not prepared to put my name and put my hand up to buy something which I don't know what I'm buying. It went to the vote. It was obviously overwhelmingly supported. And we were then told you've just bought Barnum Broom Golf Course. So questions have been asked along the way. And our councillor, one of the councillors from Bovington, Bill Burt, who's one of the Green councillors, has really been trying to dig into the detail of this. And nothing is forthcoming. Absolutely nothing. Apart from saying, oh, well, there's a possibility of a deal, there's some. So until I am told, and everybody else is told at the meeting what it was sold for, I'm as much in the dark as you are. Sorry, I can't help you anymore.
Thank you. Any other questions? 4.4, County Councillors' Report. Yes, Catherine.
I appreciate that we did have a written report from the county councillor at the last meeting, but that was sent very shortly before the meeting, really not giving people enough time to either read, digest or ask questions. Could we write to the county councillor and ask that, in view of the difficulty she has in attending the meetings, whether she could let us have her reports at least a week in advance so that we can read them and send questions for her to respond to?
I think that's very fair. Everyone in favour of that? Oh, sorry, Toby, I didn't see you. Expectation. It would be nice if they attended at least one. I'm going to bow to you. As a county councillor, you have several different parishes, don't you? But
the county councillor for the Watton ward has Watton, Ovington, Griston, Caston, Carbrook, and not Thompson. Yeah, county councillor. No,
you didn't
no,
have
not
Carbrook.
Carbrook. That's a
I
long
think there was
time ago.
5, but
Watton's definitely one of.
it would be nice to see. No. I think if we can certainly send the letter to yeah, when it comes up to election time, you will be seeing her a lot more. Okay. 4.5, Clerk's report. Everybody's seen the report that Jane sent round. Is there anything more, Michelle, I'd like to add?
No, there's nothing further to report.
Thank you. Item 5, to note and amend the works in progress list. Yes, Catherine.
Can I refer to, it's item 5 on the works in progress. It's a minute that was passed the 26th of January 2021, item 14, and it's in relation to the council logo. Can I suggest that we take that off the work in progress now, as it is some time since we first put it on there. The logo that is being used at the moment seems to be well liked. So can I suggest that we support the logo that's being used and we take that item off the work in progress now?
Has anyone got any comments on that? All those in favour of taking it off the works in progress?
And just continue with the logo that's now being used.
Yeah, to continue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Everyone else happy with the works in progress? Thank you. Item 6, public participation. Tom, is there anything that you'd like to say to the council at this moment? Okay, thank you. Item 7, finance. 7.1, to approve payments for November 2022. Hopefully everyone's been able to see those. Although, oh, sorry, Michelle, yeah?
Sorry, I just wanted to add there was 3 payments that came in after I sent out the payments for approval list. One is for Sunbelt, which is the road closure for remembrance for £960. Another one is for street entertainment at the festive market, £432, and a sport for choice invoice for consumables for £91.56.
Is everyone happy with those?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Various.
It's over about 3 months, yeah, it's kind of any
Cleaning
cleaning
and
products, any stationery bits and bobs we need. Yeah, random stuff.
So all those in favour of approving?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. 7.2, to receive the minutes from the emergency finance meeting held on the 8th of November. I'll pass over to you, Catherine.
If you remember, the emergency finance meeting was held immediately prior to the council meeting, and the recommendation was taken to the council meeting, which was accepted. So that matter has been closed. So if you want to just accept those, that would be helpful.
All those happy to accept that, the emergency ones? Thank you. 7.3, to receive the minutes from the Finance Committee meeting held on the 10th of November 2022. Again, Catherine, is there anything you want to add to those?
Just to say that we have now started on the discussion for next year's precept for the budget. It was quite a long and complicated, if you like, discussion, because like every organisation and every individual, we are going to have to make hard choices for next year, and setting the budget isn't going to be so easy. I'd just like to remind people that over the last 3 years, the increases in the budget have varied from it's between 1.5% and 2%. We've actually kept the budget right down, and for the majority of people in Watton, their contribution to budget didn't increase last year. Which was a deliberate decision on behalf of the council, because we didn't want to exacerbate people's problems. We'd love to be able to do that again this year, but genuinely, I just don't think we're going to be able to do that. So we will work very hard to at least keep the proposed increase well within inflation, and we'll do what we can to keep it down. And it should come back to you for the January meeting.
Thank you, Catherine. Any other questions on the finance meeting? No? Okay. Item 8, to consider grant application received from 864 Watton Squadron. We had the application last time. We've had a letter to accompany the application. Has everyone had a chance to see the letter? Has anyone got any comments on this? Yes, Beryl.
I'm still really not happy having given them £5,000 a little while ago to give them the 500 this particular time. Maybe next year. they apply again for it.
And they've also had 250 for the fireworks as well.
Really not happy with it.
Keith?
Yeah, I'm a bit torn on this one. I could understand where they're coming from, but also they've had an awful lot of money from us. So maybe it's a little bit too much to ask.
Yes, Stan?
Yeah, whilst echoing both Beryl and Keith's comments, and previously I've spoken in support of the squadron, and I am still in support of the squadron and what it does, but they are not in a situation where this is essential equipment that they must have, that they need. The computers, we were told, were essential and crucial to them. I think it would send the wrong message if we were to give them yet more money, in effect 3 separate financial contributions in a period of 3 months is going to send the wrong message. It's going to give other organisations false hope and also attract negative comments. Always happy to support, but I think that this one should be declined with a try again next year message.
Catherine?
I was more or less going to say the same thing, Stan, that we actually send them a sorry sort of letter, but suggest that we do support them and we support what they want the money for. It would be more appropriate if they could apply within the next financial year.
Yes, Pat?
Mindful that on each of those occasions that I can recall, no one has come along on the day to support the application, which to me is just that I'll just bung it in and hope for the best. So I think it would have been nice if someone had come along and spoke up about why they wanted it. I know they sent the letter.
Yes, Keith?
I understand where Pat's coming from, but we look at an application on paper, it's cold. There's nobody there looking at us. And if people who are applying for grants were sitting there looking at you, you might think, well, you know, what are they going to think if we don't? I wouldn't like to see people actually coming along for ordinary grants. If it's a donation and a large amount of money, I can understand the reason for them coming. But for ordinary grants like this, I don't think it would be appropriate for them to come along in person, because they should have already put it all in the application. And I think we should be looking at it without the influence of people being in the room.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Can I just put to the vote then those in favour of the grant for 864 Squadron? Can I make an amendment to that? Those in favour of sending a letter to say on this occasion they've not been successful, but they are more than welcome to try again in the new financial year, starting in April. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed. Can we do that? Send them a letter. May. Starting in May. Thank you. Item 9, to consider donation application received from Stephen's Almhouses Charity, Watton. Yes, Beryl.
Yeah, I'm a trustee on it, and okay, there's nobody from them tonight, which they would have come along should somebody have wanted. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, because they don't know what's going to happen once they get the render off, what other problems they're going to find. It is quite a lot of maintenance needed there, and that's all I can say of it.
Thank you. Yes, Pat.
I'm more than happy to support this one.
Catherine?
What I'm going to say is neither in support or opposition to this. And I don't know whether you'll be able to answer or not, Beryl. I read the application, and it made it clear that they're not a fundraising charity. And I would have liked to have been able to say to the sort of committee that nowadays any charity is in the business of raising funds. Unfortunately, it has to be a way of covering your expenses. And I was going to suggest to them that there are other charities, not other charities, sorry, other funding streams that they could perhaps look at, which may be more helpful with substantial building works.
We have got one.
They have, yeah.
But things are quite dull down there. But yes, I'll suggest. Yes. Yes, Peter.
I have a couple of concerns about it. That's helpful, Beryl, because I mean, we might be asked for even more money soon.
Well, I don't think they would. Once they've got.
Well,
you know,
okay.
They,
Yeah, I understand. Part of the concern I have, and we've given the money in the past, we're talking about supporting really four people, really. You know, that's the difficulty we're in. We've given money to other groups because they represent lots of people. And I do understand that those people are quite vulnerable in one way or another. And one would like to help. I think it would be helpful if we deferred this matter. You have a secretary and a treasurer, I believe. I don't see why Beryl should be put on the spot. Not that I want to put them on the spot, but I think it might be helpful if they came to a meeting. We can have it below the line if it's helpful, because we're talking about finances for a vulnerable group of people. And that we might want to ask a few more questions before we make a decision. I don't want to just say no out of hand, but I think I would like to know a little more. And I'll say one thing, which might sound really mean, but when you look at the account, somebody got an honorarium of over £1,000. Well, it might be, but all I'm saying is, if somebody from outside looks at it and say, hold on, why has the council given them so much money? And you know, that's why I think it'd be helpful to talk to them, and we can air all those things and find out what's going on.
Thank you. Yes, Catherine.
Yeah, I tried to actually read through the accounts as well, and I couldn't quite make sense of the figures. And I'm sure somebody who was dealing with them could have explained that to me, and that would be really helpful.
Well, Chair, can we take that then? If we invited them to come along before the council meeting at 6:30 for a private meeting with them, that would be helpful to us. And then if they said at the end of that, will you put, if it's on the agenda, will you take it again? Then we can deal with it.
So are you in favour of putting that through for the first one in December, which is the next council meeting, isn't it? Yeah.
If they can make it.
If they can make it, if not January.
Yeah.
So if they can make December, but if not, then the January would be fine because of the rendering. All those in favour of buying me fish and chips afterwards? All right, okay, thank you. Okay, if we can do a letter to them to say thank you. Item 10, to consider supporting Macmillan initiative in Watton. We had the lady come last week, the last meeting. Has anyone got any comments on that at all? Yes, Toby. Thank you, Toby. Yes, Catherine.
Toby, in considering that, can you also consider the Charlotte Harvey? Because if it was a group they wanted to meet during the day, particularly in the mornings, there is capacity there.
I think as long as we're keeping, I think her name was Sarah, the lady that came. She did have, it was suggestive, but I think at the moment it would be nice if we could do it as an initiative and then invite Tina to be involved if she wants to, rather than putting that pressure on her. Yeah. So we're all quite happy that we will. Yes, sorry, Don.
I guess the Macmillan service has contact with people who have ongoing cancer issues and ones that have recuperated from it, sort of thing. So if once we have a bit more knowledge of what we might be able to offer, they might be able to get in touch with people locally and say that this is starting, and then volunteers may well come from that as well.
Okay, so we'll leave on that one. Item 11, to receive update on options for the repair or replacement of the mayor's chain. Has everyone had a chance to see the quotes? Well, personally, I think a £50,000 chain would be lovely, but it might be a bit too heavy. Yes, Peter.
Well, I think that it's a simple choice to me. We either have it repaired or we buy a new one. That, to me, is the only choice, because you're going to have to get a new one anyway in 5 years' time. Would it be better to do it now when it won't have gone up in price over 5 years? If we could just get the little bit, what's it called? Fine, that repaired, and then look at buying a new one. I think that might be the alternative. I just got a horrible feeling that we will be paying out for repairs for the next 5 years. That's the fear I have, and it might be better to buy a new one as quickly as possible. But, you know.
Yes, Keith.
If my recollection is right, the chain was donated to the town when we became a town council in 1972, I believe, by the then clerk, Wilfred Harvey. So how much they spent on it, we don't know. Whether it was the top of the range chain or something which came in more within a budget, I don't know. It served us well since then. You think it doesn't have a lot of wear, you just put it around someone's neck and it stays there for a year. I think it's the way they turn over in bed with it on that causes the damage. So I think there is a lot of merit in thinking, should we go ahead? But Peter just said it hadn't even occurred to me that there is merit in thinking, let's look at replacement, because the more the more links you put into it, you've already got the second row in there. There's only one row when I started. You know, yeah, let's look at the option of purchasing a new one.
Yes, Jane.
Yeah, I think the way the chain is at the moment, it is very unwieldy to use, and it's going to get broken again and again because of the nature of it. It's possible to get a cosmetic repair so that it could be retired off, so you can put a roundel on it and leave it on a bus somewhere, perhaps with the museum or someone like that. But to constantly keep repairing it and sending it away, and the costs of it are quite astronomical. But there are a lot more chains available than there are on that. They're cheaper than that in lots of other places. And if we didn't have one where we keep engraving people's names on it, it wouldn't get bigger. We could just keep the same chain. Most ones I've seen when I was out and about, they don't have these engraving of names. It's a bit of a vanity project, really, to keep engraving. You know, we can fill it up if we want with the subsequent mayors, but it could be repaired quite cheaply just for a display item rather than, you know, to be worn. And then that we also, if we bought another one, we'd get a case with it as well. So we've already sort of looked at the possibility of getting a case. I do think we should have a mayor's chain because of the duties that the mayor carries out. It's not fair to the people who the mayor is visiting for them to have somebody that doesn't really stand out. So I do think that's important, but I think we're throwing good money after bad if we keep on that one.
Thank you. Pat, was your hand up? Yeah, if there's, I think your name's already on it, isn't it? So it's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I mean, personally, I can't see the point in paying to have it repaired. And I agree, it is uncomfortable to wear. There's no point in adding another chain. Let's move forward and look at the potential of the chains that are available where we don't, as Jane said, where we don't put any more names on there so that it lasts hopefully a little bit longer. And you don't have to have rows and rows of things. It's just something just when you're wherever you are that says, oh, that person's heavy and fancy like some of the towns have got. Yes, Catherine.
I was just going to suggest that if we do this, we don't just get a few quotes and then make a decision on it. I think it needs to be a bit of a project, if you like, that we look not just at different companies, but different kinds of options. So whether we just have a ceremonial thing with the jewel and no names on it, or whether we go, you know, all the different degrees of things we could do. And I know there are a lot more companies than the ones we've been in touch with. So I don't see it as something where you're just getting 3 quotes. I think it needs to be a little bit more than that. So we make sure we've explored all the different types of options.
With that in mind, would it be more sensible to have perhaps a working group to look at these different things rather than putting it onto Jane in the office to say, can you find more, if that's in agreement with people? Well volunteered, Catherine. Yeah. Sorry, Toby. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Catherine.
Within the finance, the working budget for this year, we don't have a budget for that. And if we did that, we'd really have to go to general reserves for the funding, which was one of the reasons I was suggesting that we really look into the different options and perhaps have something that we can take even to the next council, which will be in May. I wouldn't, this is just my personal feeling, I wouldn't be comfortable in looking to make that sort of decision, certainly before then.
Yes, Keith.
Yeah, I can understand where Toby's coming from, but it's not the chain that's the important part. It's the perception that people have of the chain. When you're, I've been to Germany a lot with twinning, and one of the things the Germans love is the fact that our mayor has a chain of office. Their burgomaster, you could pass in the street, you wouldn't know who he was or she was, even if he's on official or her on official duty. The mayor of Watton represents every single person in Watton. And the way that recognition is shown is by the wearing of the chain, as in that portrait behind Stan of Garnet Mitchell, the first mayor of Watton. When we became a town council, they, as I say, I think it was Wilf Harvey, presented the council with the chain of office, because we went from being a parish council to a town council. And I think it is important as the person who is going out into the community, into the wider community of Breckland, that they've got something which says, I am representing Watton. And I think if anybody has been, which I have, to an event wearing that chain of office, you are accepted as representing everybody. So I think it would be very remiss of us not to have that chain which says, I'm here on behalf of everybody. I think the chain of office is, to a town council like ours, essential.
Yes, Jane.
One of the reasons I put forward my views that we should change and get a new chain is literally for cost effectiveness. I mean, the money it's going to keep costing to repair the chain is ridiculous. The money that we're going to spend on that, we could probably get a new chain that would last a lot longer. And you can't just not repair it or send it away occasionally for refurbishment, because the back gets quite dirty and it can't be cleaned. So you can't keep passing it on to other people, especially during the summer months, because that makes you get quite warm when you're wearing that in the summer. You have to send it away for regular cleaning. If it was simply a chain, it wouldn't need that. It could just be polished with ordinary jewellery cleaner. So that it's cost effectiveness that I would like to see it changed.
Sorry, Pat. Yes, Bill.
Repair as best we can, not properly, but to enable it to be passed on to the museum. The next 5 mayors' names to go on it, but to look to having a new one. And
Then,
yeah, and then during this period of time, really look at it like Catherine says. But I mean, Jane, would you consider making one?
I was just going to say.
Because looking at Sue,
in-house.
it's brilliant.
It might be quite a challenge to do it. One of the reasons I wanted to see it changed was the problem with the chain that we have now, is it because of it's all on that backing and the way that the lozenges are connected. They're all connected by jump rings, which is a technical term which you probably don't understand, but they're rings that are open, they're split open, and they're closed by pushing them up. On decent chains, they are all soldered. So if they're soldered, they don't damage people's clothing. It's simply because that chain had like myriad of jump rings on it, which all had open ends, which was tearing people's clothes, which was why it needed to go on one. I might be able to make a chain for you, but I don't know how good I could make it look. So I'm willing to try.
Yes, Dan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whilst I concur everything that's been said about heritage, I'm troubled with spending any amount of money on what the public may perceive as bling at a time when everybody's absolutely being hammered financially by the government, by price rises, by fuel costs. I think the idea is perfect. I think the timing is not. A route I would prefer to see was, excuse me, would be that we perhaps look at archiving the one we have, retiring it, whatever language you wish to use. Personally, I'd pine for it. I'm a traditionalist, but why not look towards retiring it? Perhaps set a date in the future when we could plan financially to ensure that we can afford the chain in perhaps 5 years' time, 10 years' time, or am I covering something that's already been said? Well, I've said it again anyway.
Yes,
If we do what's been suggested and do something like repair what we have now, and then have a longer term plan to actually look into all the options, it can go into the council's 4-year plan. Just saying it neatly for you, Stan.
So is that repairing it with Birmingham or doing our own repairs? Yes,
Okay, Chair? Yeah. No, it needs soldering, and you've got to carefully. It's got to be cold soldered, because you've got an emblem in the middle which has enamel in it, and that will not. It will, if you use ordinary soldering, that will ruin it. And the bar that's on the bottom needs soldering back, and then it's got to be gilded afterwards. So it isn't something that I have the skill to do. You could possibly do it cosmetically to make it go in a case, but to be able to wear it again, that needs to be structurally solid.
Thank you, Jane. Yes, Peter.
Well, we've got to have it repaired, and part of the thing is they want to repair the whole thing. I would look at just repairing the jewel bit, because that means it's not going to cost too much money to send it anywhere, because some of these people you've got down here want to see it first and then say what they can do. I would get that bit repaired, put it back on.
But the bar that it goes
Well,
on.
and the bar, but you don't need everything else doing. Well, if you could get away without doing that, I would do that for the moment. And then, even if we got something as a temporary measure, what the mayor's wearing now, which is the one you made, we could carry on using that for a while we look at purchasing something else. And I would be inclined to do that. I mean, at the moment, I'm supposed to wear the deputy mayor's one, which I give to the mayor. I'm not precious about wearing anything as deputy. I really am not. It was a nice idea, but really, we ought to be looking, do we need that kind of expense? So I would suggest seeing if we could just repair the dual bit with the bar, because we can at least send that off someone. It's not going to cost too much money to send it someone for them to have a look at.
Yes, Jane.
You've got to send the whole thing away for that bar to be repaired, because it's attached to the whole thing, there's your problem. That does into there. I mean, I'm quite happy to look at various options for what could be done. The chain that the mayor is wearing at the moment, I only made it as a temporary repair. It was a temporary item. It's not that strong. I don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, you know, it's the council's to do with as it chooses. I'd be quite proud if it was used to tide us over. I think that's quite a lovely idea for me. But it depends on what the rest of the councils want to do.
Can I just ask, Jane, what about the possibility of just getting the jewel repaired, sent off and repaired, and then some way permanently attaching that to the collar and not to the bar? Would that be?
I could have a look at it and see what options there are and do some research.
Because that way we could just.
Yeah. Okay, I'll have a look, see what I can
This
find
side of
out.
Christmas, if you don't mind.
Hmm?
This side of Christmas, if you don't mind.
Oh, I've just put my shopping now on hold. Yeah, I'll give it a look and see what I can come up with.
So can I make a suggestion then that we look at the cost of sending just the jewel away to be repaired? Whether that's going to end up Birmingham, I don't know. And then when that comes back, look at whether that can be permanently attached in some way to the collar. Because it's like.
Can I just ask Pat a question? When you wore that, did you used to put the jewel on that?
That one there?
Yeah,
Yes.
you did. So the jewel that it does fit on that one.
Okay.
No,
this is
not-
your
no.
one,
It's
isn't
my
it?
one, yeah, the other one.
The
Yeah,
one with
so
the
it
spike.
would hook on there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there
So
was a,
maybe we could do that, and then Heritage Group
Yeah.
and the finance committee, when they're doing their 4-year plan.
there was a large circle on that which should take.
Yeah, there is.
There is.
There is. a
Yes, that
circle
should
there.
fit in there. So you should be able to put it directly on that.
So all those in favour of just getting the jewel repaired, and all those in favour of the Heritage Working Group and Finance looking at potentials for a new chain over the next 6 months, which would bring you into the new council. All those in favour? Yeah. Thank you, that's carried. To agree to commission asbestos report for the public toilets. I think that's something that we've got to have it done, so there is no. Yes, Catherine.
Can I just ask Michelle a question? I'm not sure whether you'll be able to answer, Michelle. The asbestos report, that's for the public toilets in the middle of town? And is this to do with the refurbishment? Okay, that's fine.
I propose and share that we go ahead with that.
All those in favour? Carried. Then item 13, over to planning. Jane, if you would. Yep.
Yes, we haven't got much tonight. 13.1, 3PL 2022 1238 HOU, single story front porch extension, Watton 11 Tedder Close. I didn't see any issues with it. Has anyone got anything they want to raise? No. 13.2, 3DC 2022-0307 DOC discharge condition 21B on the application, that's Barrett's off of Thetford Road. Did anybody read it? It was to do with a travel plan. Did anybody read it?
Catherine.
Anyone got any comments, Catherine?
Yeah, I've read the full residential travel plan for the Barrett site. The bit that I thought that perhaps we needed to comment on was the local accessibility audit. And there's just various things which I felt were either wrong or missing. So, for example, there's no mention of Thetford railway station when they talk about railway. The public houses, it doesn't mention the Crown, although it mentions the King's Arms. Places of worship, it only mentions St Mary's. The village halls, it doesn't mention Watton Youth and Community Centre or the Carbrook Community Centre. Playing fields, it mentions Merton Road, but not Bridle Road, Watton Sports Centre, Watton Youth and Community Centre. The fire station, I can't remember now, was it Attleborough or Swaffham, rather than on Thetford Road, which is just down the road from the site. Rail station, it doesn't mention Attleborough or Thetford. And for leisure, it only mentions, I think, the sports centre, not the Youth and Community Centre, Lockneaton, Queen's Hall, or the Wayland Partnership. So I just made a note of those, and I was just going to pass them on if we wanted to comment on that. Yes, Peter.
Yes, Peter.
Following up on that from what Kath said, they said the nearest community centre is in Salem. You know, so I have to ask myself, who wrote the plan? Because whoever wrote it hasn't, I think, that it's not somebody from here. It's been written from a head office somewhere, looking at a computer and putting in nearest thing without even looking. So I don't know what relevance it ever has for anybody in the long run, but if Brett can say it doesn't matter, then what's the point in having it?
Yeah, but I think it should be accurate if they're submitting it. Yes. I suggest that we take Catherine's points and put them forward for corrections for the district council. Everyone happy with that? Yep. Thank you, Catherine. It was a bit of a long read. 13.3 NM 2022-0108 NMA non-material amendment to previous planning application, which we have commented on, 55 Thetford Road. It's just a minor amendment. I didn't see any issues with it. I don't know if anybody else had any worries about it. No. And then one that came in subsequent to that was 3PL 2022-1183 HOU minor amendments to plans regarding an extension at 4 Churchill Close. It did come to us for comments, but we didn't have any comments on that. I didn't see anything that was an issue. No one got any problems? No, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 14, to pass the resolution to exclude the public and press to consider staffing matters. It's at this stage, Tom, that we'd ask you to leave. Is it law? It politely, of course, but thank you for coming and look forward to seeing you again.